So friends, today we are going to talk about social problems and theories. In the previous classes, we have discussed various perspectives in sociology, and we have also touched upon various institutions of society. Now let us see how do we analyze social problems, or can sociologists offer a meaningful, useful, acceptable solution to problems of society. Many people expect that because sociologists deal with society and because sociologists understand dynamics of society, working of society, relationship between individuals and society better, they must also help us in providing more feasible and more appropriate solutions to social problems. Now let us see how do sociologists approach this. A sociologist will first ask, what is social problem? Whenever we discuss anything, we have to define it. When we discuss religion, we have to define it. In sociology of religion, you will agree with me, a religion cannot be the same thing as in religious communities. All religious communities have their own understanding of religion. We are not interested in those concepts of religion. For us, religion is a kind of belief system which interacts with other institutions of society. Sociologists have therefore their own way of defining religion. Likewise, when it comes to social problems, what is social problem? You may identify a large number of problems as social problems, but what is your definition on the basis of which you can include some in the problems and exclude others? Even in answering this question, role of theories or theoretical perspectives will come in picture. Even in defining social problem. Social problem from the perspective of government of India, social problems from the perspective of academicians, and social problems from the perspective of people would not be same. Usually, as it is defined in sociology textbooks, social problems are those problems which get defined as problems by the government of a country and on which government spends some resources to eradicate them. But the moment I say so, am I not using the functionalist or the managerial perspective? Government of India will say that some of the problems of Indian society include population problem, high infant mortality, high maternal mortality, poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, or high school dropout, or communal conflicts, etc. A large number of sociologists are associated with universities, government, and research institutions which work for government. And quite often these sociologists are likely to adopt the social engineering approach. Functionalists functionalists or sociologists associated with government will use the approach of social engineering. Without going into genesis of this idea of social engineering, I can say that it believes in piecemeal change. So one problem gets identified at one time, it's analyzed, means its socio-economic, geographical, cultural roots are understood, and specific strategies are developed to solve the problem of ill health or the problem of illiteracy. And obviously, the managerial perspective will advocate social engineering. Today, if I try to relate what I discussed earlier regarding theoretical perspectives, if I take the issue of education and apply all these perspectives, functionalists, Marxists, symbolic interactionists, identity-oriented paradigm, ethnomethodology, let me try how sociologists subscribing to these theories or views or postulates, axioms, paradigms, working in these paradigms, will look at the problem of education. Actually, in doing so, I am not much above your level. I have not worked in the field of education. My area of research is population. So, I will be applying these theories which I discussed earlier to education exactly in the manner you can think of. But why I am doing so? First, I thought that if I take up this problem today, I will be at your level, and we will begin to make an attempt to relate social problems to theories. Now, let us just recapitulate what Merton said. In functionalism, we discussed Merton, we discussed Talcott Parsons, and couple of others. To recapitulate, Merton said, Merton is one of the latest, most recent, Merton's contribution is the most recent contribution in functionalism, and therefore it may be quite helpful to talk about Merton. Merton says that the whole functional theory can be reduced to three basic postulates. One, the postulate of functional unity of society. Functional unity of society. Second, universal functionalism. And third, postulate of indispensability. According to functional unity of society, society consists of interrelated parts. Everything is correlated with everything else. One social fact is correlated with other social facts. One thing changes, everything changes, the whole society changes. Comte talked about statics and dynamics. Statics was about relationships between different parts of society, and dynamics was the relationship between one part of society and the whole society. And society has both static aspects and dynamic aspects. When one part changes, the whole society changes, or when the whole society is changing, as it is becoming more modern, more advanced, industrial, post-industrial, then all parts of society are changing. Or Emile Durkheim would say that there are two types of explanations of social phenomena. Two types of explanations. Causal and functional. I thought that I must mention this because this also helps in clarifying what the meaning of functionalism or what the meaning of function is. There can be two types of explanations of social phenomena or social facts. Causal talks about how does something originate. History, background. How does something originate? That is causal. Because by definition, causal means something which is followed by something which we want to explain. So somebody can say that industrialization leads to urbanization. So urbanization is the effect and industrialization is the cause. Causal explanation. History, background, factors which have given rise to some social fact or some social phenomenon. Functional explanation is another type of explanation, and this explanation explains a social fact or institution or a practice in terms of its usefulness, its function, its usefulness for the larger society. There can be two ways of looking at causal explanations in sociology, or two ways of looking at explanations in sociology, explanations of all social facts. One in terms of what are the causes, means what happened in the past because of which something has resulted. And functional means useful effect of something for the larger society, which explains why something exists. Okay. So summarizing the functional perspective. Another reason why I am talking about Merton especially, because some people believe in functional framework that functionalism can also be as revolutionary as Marxism. And functionalism can, earlier people thought that functionalism is only to justify things, and functionalism cannot explain social change. But Mertonian framework of functionalism suggested ways of handling the problem of conflicts, change, even revolution. Merton says that there are three major postulates in the entire functionalist analysis of social phenomena. Functional unity of society, universal functionalism. If something is functional, it is universally functional for all parts of society, for entire society, for all institutions. As in biological organism, if something exists, if liver exists, you can show why existence of liver is so important for other parts of society and also for biological body. If liver stops functioning, body will not survive. So if something stops, something which exists, stops existing, then the society will not survive. This was the kind of thinking. Though some people say that this way of looking at social facts is not correct, because unlike biological beings, Societies do not die, societies only change. So if one institution, say religion or economic institution or family or marriage, stops functioning, it does not mean that society will die. It will result into a different kind of social structure. Now Merton says that there is problem with all the postulates, and indispensability means anything which exists has to exist. Everything is interrelated, all functions are positive, and anything that exists must exist, because otherwise the system will not survive. Merton said that first of all you realize that things may be functional for one part of society, functions, dysfunctions, and non-functions. And micro and macro, and functional alternatives, or equivalent. Merton says that for functionalism to take care of various problems of society and to handle charges which are often labeled against functional theory must incorporate these three things: A, B, C. Let it be clear that 1, 2, 3, these postulates are not what Merton is suggesting. Merton is saying that if you read carefully works of sociologists who have worked in the framework of functionalism, then it appears that all of them tend to believe in these three things. This is not Merton's contribution. Merton only suggests that functionalists seem to believe in these three things, these three postulates. This is Merton's contribution. Merton says that when you analyze things, you have to analyze them separately at the level of larger entity, society, at the level of institutions, regions, cultures, and groups, subgroups. And it is quite possible that something which is functional at one level may be dysfunctional at other levels, and something which is dysfunctional at one level may be non-functional at other levels. I think I gave the example of economic development by going for big dams. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, when he inaugurated Bhakra Nangal Dam, said that these are the temples of modern India. He believed that big irrigation projects like Bhakra Nangal and big industries of India will produce a new era in Indian history, which will be characterized by high level of advancement in all fields: knowledge, industry, wealth, politics, industrially advanced, economically advanced, a much more democratic. That these new temples will bring India to the map of the world. If you apply a Mertonian framework, then you can easily see that yes, big dams are good. For national economy, big dams are good. And perhaps they have been a major factor in green revolution in Punjab and Haryana. So it's functional. If we did not have green revolution, in 60s there was so much scarcity of food in India that our planners were worried. What will happen if population continues to grow and there is a shortage of food production? So certainly these big dams have solved the problems of food scarcity. I remember that at one time, Lal Bahadur Shastri, now very few people remember Lal Bahadur Shastri as the Prime Minister of India. He was so much disturbed by food shortage in the country that he suggested that everybody should keep fast on one day. And after, people respected Lal Bahadur Shastri when he said that you should keep fast on one day so that we can, to some extent, ameliorate the problem of food shortage, and people kept fast. Our big dams, big irrigation projects, big industries, socio-economic zones nowadays. Nandigram, one of the latest problem or controversy regarding big industrialization or socio-economic zones, Nandigram, or housing projects of Greater Noida. They are functional. For the society at large, they are functional. But for several groups in society, and maybe for several institutions, and maybe for several regions, and maybe for several communities, they are dysfunctional. For several families, they are dysfunctional. Those villages in Bhakra Nangal, in Narmada, in Sardar Sarovar Dam, in Sonbhadra, Mirzapur region, Singrauli power projects. Thousands of villages are dispossessed. They lose their home, they lose their culture, they lose their means of subsistence. And the kind of society we live in which power only matters, even the promises made by government to families which are rehabilitated are often not fulfilled. From the perspective of Indian nation, big dams, Sardar Sarovar, Narmada, Bhakra Nangal, they are functional. From the perspective of those who have been dispossessed, they are dysfunctional. Merton says that functional theory, scope of functional perspective can be expanded to cover various things, functions as well as dysfunctions. So it's functional for society. Big dams are functional for society. Big dams are dysfunctional for the villages which are dispossessed. And they may be non-functional for a large number of manual laborers in several parts of the country. No consequence of that. When fishing is modernized and you are using specialized, mechanized, technologically advanced boats and techniques of fishing, it's functional. You produce more fish. You can export fish. You can satisfy the local demand. Country's demands can be met and you can export, earn foreign exchange. It's functional. It's functional for the country as a whole. It is also functional for those people who have money and who can go for high tech in the field of fishing. But it is dysfunctional for the traditional fishing community, for the traditional community of fishermen without money, without social power, without political power, without knowledge. It's dysfunctional. They are just crushed. They lose their means of employment. They are not able to survive. For them, it is dysfunctional. So, functions, and so functions, things may have functions, dysfunctions, non-functions, and they may be different at different levels, micro and macro. Something may be functional at micro level and dysfunctional at the macro level. Something may be functional at micro and dysfunctional. And functional, Merton also says that there is nothing which is indispensable, because societies will not die. If you think that social stratification is inevitable, because social stratification exists everywhere, and social stratification has some functions, you can apply Merton's theory and ask, what are the functions of social stratification? Why does social stratification exist? social stratification or social inequality exists in all societies. So, there on empirical grounds and on the basis of the observation that social stratification is ubiquitous, functional sociologists say that it must exist because it serves some needs of society. Now, Merton will say that functionalists need not assume that just because social stratification exists everywhere, it is good and it must exist. You can think of other institutions or other ways of allocating roles. So, if you agree with Kingsley Davis and Wilbert Moore that social stratification is a way of role allocation, then you can find other ways of role allocation without having social stratification in society. This is what Merton will say, that nothing is indispensable. You can certainly explore what are alternatives, functional alternatives or equivalents. What are those things which will have equivalent function in society? Social stratification has say function F1. There may be some other thing O which also has the same function F1. Then we will say that O is functional alternative or functional equivalent of social stratification. It's equivalent because this O, some other thing, some other way of distribution or allocation of roles in society is as good as social stratification. So, there can be functional equivalent and functional alternatives. Ethnomethodology, as a Marx looks at everything in terms of class, and class means economic relations. Symbolic interactionism is micro. It looks at things in terms of self, self-image, primary and secondary deviance. It gives more importance to secondary deviance, which is generated by reactions of society toward the deviant. Label, self-fulfilling prophecy or self-fulfilling prophecy. Or actualization of self-image. Symbols, human communication is symbolic, and the symbols what things are, their interpretations, they depend on our social interactions. Ethnomethodology we discussed yesterday, ethnomethodology, something closer to symbolic interactionism, and ethnomethodology suggested that what we are discovering as facts, as new knowledge, is situated in what we already know. And indexicality means that the meanings are rooted in the social context. Now, let me, after recapitulating Merton and symbolic interactionism and a bit of ethnomethodology, now let me take up the problem of education and tell you what kind of questions will be asked by sociologists belonging to different camps or subscribing or believing in different paradigms or perspectives or theories. I said that I am not a specialist in education, but still let me make an effort. So, my discussion on relationship between education and theories must be seen from that perspective only. that I am trying to illustrate certain theoretical ideas by taking the example of education. But they are not the final truths and they are not based on any evidence. Education is a topic in which I would say that functionalists would be most interested. Government would be most interested. Experts, sociological. There are two types of sociologists: social engineers, which produce that kind of sociology that is of help in running society, that is of help to government, that is of help to dominant sections of society. And there is another sociology which focuses on the relationship of social phenomena and the power structure. Those who focus on relationship between social facts and power structure, they produce another kind of sociology which can be subversive and which can lead to ideas not to reform society but just to change society, to restructure society, to create a revolution, to create a condition in which the power structure is completely changed. It's a reverse or it's completely changed or a new kind of power structure develops. Why are governments interested in education? I can say that it seems to serve several needs of governments. One, that government can legitimize, or the powerful sections of society or wealthy people or scientists, bureaucrats, politicians, those in the government, they can explain poverty, unemployment, ill health, high fertility, high maternal mortality, everything, all social problems in terms of lack of education, and create an impression that as long as the level of literacy and education in our society is low, other problems of society cannot be solved. Create an impression. Why is India poor? Because of lack of education. Why is India poor? Why is India with so much of unemployment? Because there is no education. Literacy level is still very low as compared to the developed countries. Educational achievements are low, quality of education is low. So you find faults in the education system and create an image that if our education system is perfected and level of literacy and level of education achievement goes up, all problems of Indian society will be solved. Create that impression. It helps. It helps in legitimizing the forms of government that you have. You know, by diverting people's attention to the real issue of power, of political relationships, of class struggle, if you divert their attention toward this, that education, we need to provide education, and it is only when people are more educated then all problems of Indian society are solved. This is what functionalists will say. And if you apply Merton's framework, however, then you may show that education may be functional, dysfunctional, non-functional at different levels. And there are functional alternatives or equivalents to education. For whom is education functional? Education is functional not for everyone. Education serves the ideological function of the government. I remember, although then when I give my examples, then it takes more time and I get sidetracked. But I have a temptation to tell you a story. I was doing some field work. I did not do much on education, but you cannot ignore education. I was doing field work in Sonbhadra district of Uttar Pradesh, tribal and non-tribal areas. And what I found there, that everybody, all youths, this was the field work among youths, that all youths seemed to be dissatisfied with the level of education they had already achieved. They wanted more. And they blamed themselves or their family or their community or their socio-economic condition for them not having the level of education that they desired. So you go to a person who is illiterate, कैसे हो, क्या करते हो, what is your source of income? He will say, I can't do anything, I am illiterate. Because I am illiterate, I am not able to find any meaningful work for me. That is understandable, he is illiterate. Although, if you look at human history, for lakhs of years, illiterate people have produced everything. Literacy is a new phenomenon. Today we say that literacy is like leprosy. And if you are not literate, you can't do anything. Many great things have been done by illiterate people. And for lakhs of years, we have been illiterate only. Human society has become literate only now. But you see, somebody, it's very good for society. If somebody loses self-confidence, self-esteem, develops inferiority and becomes marginalized by feeling that he is illiterate, he can't do anything. Good for society, for the powerful people. Then I meet someone who says, I am primary pass. Because of my father's poor condition, I could not study much. If I had done high school, I could have done something. He will then tell you what he could have done if he was high school pass. He was also unhappy, low self-image, low confidence, unemployed, frustrated, blaming himself. Then you meet intermediate pass. He will say, you see, I am only intermediate. Conditions of my family did not permit me to go to university or college. What can intermediate pass people do today? कुछ नहीं कर सकते. They are also lacking in self-esteem, self-confidence. They feel marginal. They can't do anything. क्या? Very good for government. Very good for Lalu Yadav, very good for Sonia Gandhi, very good for all political parties. The system will run because these people, lakhs of such people in our country, they feel they can't do anything and they are useless. You meet an adult who is a graduate and he will also say the same thing. I am only BA. My condition did not permit me to go for MPhil or PhD. If I had done PhD, I would have become a faculty member somewhere. I had to stop at BA. What can BAs do? कुछ नहीं कर सकते. BA कुछ नहीं कर सकते. My father did not have money to send me for engineering education or management education. If I had done MCA, then things would have been different. He is at the same level of mentality at which the illiterate person is. कुछ नहीं कर सकते. When you meet MA pass people or PhD, they also have the same thing. क्या करें? PhD, I am PhD from BHU or I am PhD from Allahabad. What can I do? I am trying to get a contract position. लेकिन उससे भी क्या होगा? In contract position you get only 5,000 rupees a month. There are no jobs. I do not have connections. What will you do with that kind of education? Then to me it appeared that this kind of education may be functional for the society as a whole, no doubt. You need education. Macro and micro. These experiences of mine can be interpreted in Martonian framework as well as in Marxist framework. Merton will say that as a whole, education is good. We need education, we need IITs, ISCs, this and that. But it may be dysfunctional for many people. And quite rightly many villagers say that education is a useless thing. If you are educated, then you will not find any employment for people like us in rural areas, for youths coming from rural areas. There will be no employment. But after getting educated, these youths will not work in the farm. They will not like to work in agriculture. So in Hindi they say, "Dhobi ka kutta ghar ka na ghat ka." Dhobi ka kutta, a pet of a washerman, na ghar ka or na ghat ka. So an educated person in rural areas, he can neither take up agricultural activities, he cannot help in modernization of agriculture for various reasons, and he can also not find employment. Dysfunction. Dysfunction for a very large number of persons. Education is producing dysfunction for a large number of people. Macro, micro. And if education is important, can we not think of something? If education is important at all, then can we not think of some ways of providing employment or ways of meaningful engagement of people who are illiterate? Illiterate people or less educated people can also do many things. If you make self-help groups effective, then even without education, people can earn money. And the cases of successful NGOs, microfinance, self-help groups show that education is not important for employment or for income generation for most of the people. The kind of income that most of the people need can be generated in many other ways. They will be functional, equivalent to education. Actually, they will be much better for them. We sociologists must, it is our responsibility to look for functional, equivalent or alternatives to education. Then many other types of questions can be asked. It all depends on whether you are a functionalist or a Marxist, or you are ethnomethodologist, or you are a symbolic interactionist. The main thing is that all those sociologies, all those analyses of education or society, which will lead to status quo or reformist implications, social engineering, they will be done in functional perspective, and they will be promoted by any government. One day I was saying that after socialist revolution in Russia, no matter what they call their social science, but much of their social science becomes functionalist only. Now they have to run the system. You need one kind of sociology to focus on power relations and to make people understand why they are poor, why they are unemployed, why they are in miserable condition, why they are alienated, why do they lose their self-confidence, self-image, why are they disgruntled, and what actually can provide them all of these things. What actually can provide them employment, confidence, meaning in life, participation, a good self-image. You can do that kind of sociology also. But that sociology will be revolutionary sociology, a subversive sociology, subaltern sociology. That sociology will be quite disruptive, and that will destroy the existing social structure. existing fabric of society. That will be another kind of sociology. Somebody can ask in education, most people will correlate, most functional sociologists will correlate education with economic development. But somebody at the micro level can ask a question, when, in what conditions does education lead to social mobility? Does education lead to social mobility in all cases? By studying conditions of marginal groups, so-called, say, low caste, low classes, marginal groups, vulnerable groups, remote populations, you can find that education has not changed anything, that education has not produced any social mobility. Education has only created a kind of alienation among them. It has not helped at all, it has only harmed their interests. Long back in Hindu Swaraj, 100 years back in Hindu Swaraj, Mahatma Gandhi wrote that the kind of education we are providing under British Crown will be harmful. It will not solve any problem of India, it will create more problems in India. And looked at from one perspective, our education in post-independence India has harmed more people than it has helped. Maybe by getting good education, professional education from elite institutions. Some people, yes, in some cases there has been mobility. Some people have found good jobs, they are earning a lot of money. But I don't know whether in overall terms, education has helped them also. If you become a software engineer and your life is always uncertain, you may lose your job anytime. You are earning a lot of money, but you may lose your job anytime. There is a lot of politics in the organization. And you are not sure that how will you repay the loans that you have taken for buying a house in Bangalore. It's not good. It's only producing insane persons. And if you give psychological tests of mental health to software engineers or professionals in cosmopolitan cities, you may find that majority of them suffer from psychosis or neurosis. They have to suffer. They have been separated from the traditional family and traditional norms. They have developed very high aspirations. And they live in uncertain, precarious conditions. They are not sure what will happen tomorrow. And the knowledge on the basis of which they have got the job is also not the knowledge which can support them in the time of crisis, because that knowledge is not required. Actually, there is no correlation between their education capital and the kind of job they have got. So you are in education capital, you are dual degree M.Tech from IIT Kanpur in chemical engineering. But if you lose your job as sales manager or executive in a software company, your dual degree educational capital in chemical engineering does not help you at all. It would have been better if you had taken a job in a chemical industry, fetching much lower rewards at that time. When you become a software engineer, इतना attraction हो जाता है, 10 लाख का, 20 लाख का, 50 लाख का पैकेज मिल रहा है. And if you join some core company, वो 6 लाख 7 लाख रुपए दे रही है. Who will go for core company? You will go for teaching. Teaching में क्या रखा है? You could have done MS or PhD and gone for teaching. Lifetime compare करिए. Lifetime compare करिए तो if you are in teaching, you are lifelong happy. When you are in software company, you are lifelong unhappy. पैसा आ रहा लेकिन you are lifelong unhappy and you are not even sure of money. Politics is everywhere. And when you lose a job at, say, age of 40, you can lose your job anytime. Then what you have learned in educational institution, what educational capital you have earned. You have education. We say that in modern societies, your placement is on the basis of credentials, not on the basis of ascription. but this credential will not help you at all. You may have done your dual degree chemical engineering 10 years back, but when you lose a job as a sales executive in a software company, क्या करे? Nobody will take you as a chemical engineer at that time. क्या 10 साल में सब भूल गया. So education is, in majority of cases, education is useless. So one type of sociology makes connections of this type: education for economic development, education for modernization. Another type of sociology looks at the other side of the correlation. Has education modernized us? Has education made us more humane? Can you say that educated people have stronger beliefs in human values than uneducated or illiterate people? Gandhi did not think so. Premchand did not think so. They thought that education will make people more clever, manipulating, dishonest, corrupt, and harmful for society. I think that side of argument also holds some merit, that educated people are more clever, maneuvering, they more fraud. So one purpose of education is to maintain the system. One purpose of education is to show the other side of the picture. There is one sociology believing in social engineering, piecemeal change, which will be more popular among establishment sociologists. Planning Commission, that education, Planning Commission documents will show that this is literacy, these are achievement rates at secondary level, tertiary level. We have opened so many IITs, IIMs and all. And these are the strategies to promote more education, to reduce dropout rates. This is one kind of sociology of education which you will find in the documents of Planning Commission. There will be another kind of sociology which will be found in writings of Marxists, ethnomethodologists, symbolic interactionists, or spiritualists, or people of some vision, and that will show that education is not going to serve any of these purposes. Education does not produce social mobility. One of my PhD students is now studying education in Mahasa community, a scheduled caste community of Jammu. And on the basis of field work, she is doing field work, and she tells me that, sir, education does not help them at all. Whether their children are primary pass or 8th standard pass or high school pass or illiterate, they are bound to take up the same kind of job. It's rare. Only in some very, very rare cases has education produced social mobility. And one can examine then, symbolic interactionists can examine under what conditions for some people education has produced social mobility. But in most cases education does nothing. The reverse is also true. If you study youth coming from the powerful classes, then without education also they occupy top positions in some other industry or organization or something, without education also. So actually the kind of education, some sociologists may say that what kind of education we have depends on social structure. It legitimizes social structure, and then it means that it's functional for the dominant class, but it may be dysfunctional or non-functional for the others. Okay. So we stop here. We have to stop at some point. I would say that if you are not doing anything else, then explore this interesting question for yourself. Take application of Martonian framework helps in understanding social stratification.